So this is the time set for a contested hearing in the Anderson Silva case. I don't know that we're going to get to what would normally be a fully contested hearing. I think we're going to have admissions from Mr. Silva as to, and you already will see them in the answer to the complaint. Let me lay a foundation for the case quickly and explain where we are and where I am thinking this hearing goes. And we leave it to the commission to ask any questions of the toxicologists or obviously of Mr. Silva and their expert. So the basis for this case, quickly for the record, is Mr. Silva fought here on January 31 of this year. He was subject to in-competition and out-of-competition testing. The first date upon which he was tested out of competition was January 9th of this year. He was tested by the Sports Medicine Research and Testing Laboratory. That's where the sample, the urine specimen, was analyzed. The professional collector went to Mr. Silva for the collection of that specimen. The Smyrtle lab reported a positive or adverse result to the commission, unfortunately after he had already competed in the January 31 contest. That report, however, did come back positive for 2 exogenous steroids. Again, exogenous meaning men don't produce these. The only way out of the system is from an outside source. Those 2 steroids being drostanolone and for shorthand I'll call it methylandrostane. Again, he was subject to in-competition testing on fight night. On fight night, we do have the Sports Medicine Research and Testing Lab again saying he was positive pre and post for one of those steroids that was in his system on the 9th, and that being the drostanolone metabolite. We have Quest doing a post-fight urinalysis and saying that he came back adverse for benzodiazepines. There's no disclosure other than protein on the medical questionnaire. Okay, that's a summary. Where I'm hoping to go with this is quickly 2 things. One, Mr. Silva has filed an answer. He did not ask for the B specimens to be tested related to the January 9th testing that again came back positive from Smyrtle for 2 exogenous steroids. The lit packs have been produced by Smyrtle for that test. Okay, so they've been produced to them, they've seen them, their expert can talk about the method or how they do appear in Smyrtle's data relative to those 2 steroids. Okay. So what we have is we have a positive result on the 9th for which there has been no challenge. Okay? They're going to discuss some of the in-competition testing possibly on the 31st. The state stands by and will submit the matter based upon Smyrtle's analysis pre and post finding the presence of the drostanolone metabolite. Okay? I already think the commission has enough evidence based upon I won't call it an admission yet, but based upon the results of the 9th that have not been contested, essentially. They haven't asked for the Bs to be tested. Okay? In his answer, you're going to see that you have seen that he's admitting the use of a supplement. Again, this was not disclosed on the pre-fight medical questionnaire, and he's attributing the use of that supplement to the positive result for the drostanolone. Okay? My point about, sorry,
say that again, please.
Mr. Silva is saying that he took a supplement, and that the supplement, according to his own testing of this supplement, for which I have no data, but taking it on face value, he's saying he took a supplement, he tested it, the report related to that testing of the supplement revealed the presence of drostanolone metabolite. Okay, so my point about that admission, it's an affirmative defense styled in the complaint, but it's really an admission to me. The drostanolone, they're saying we have an explanation for it. It's because I took a supplement, I sent it to a lab, and it came back for drostanolone. That kind of, to me, clears the issue on the 31st, because the 31st, again, only relates to the drostanolone. That's what Smurtle said was in there, and whether or not another lab may have detected it on a screen or didn't, I don't see it as relevant, because he's already saying I took a supplement that was, in his explanation, will be contaminated, and it relates to drostanolone. So to me, you've got no challenge of the results on the 9th for the both of the steroids. You've got an admission that I took a supplement that had drostanolone in it, and so whether another lab screened for it and it came back positive or negative or not, Smurtle found it, and you've got the admission anyway, so you have enough evidence to make that finding on the 31st.
What are you told about the delay in returning that report of January, on February 10th?
Well,
What is the...
so Dr. Eichner with Smurtle can go into detail about it, but basically the way it works at the testing lab is that they get certain specimens and then they test them in batches. And so depending where you are in the batch, you might be the last one in and you get tested earlier and reported earlier. You might be the first one in and be waiting for a day or something until they get enough of the required specimens that they're going to test in that batch to run the testing. And so I think Executive Director Bennett has put a procedure in place so that there won't be a delay like that again in the reporting.
Have you been provided any of the information about their testing of their, whatever he tested?
No.
So we have no idea how it was tested. We have no idea what they tested and who tested it. And we don't know anything about it other than they're saying we tested our supplements and we found some steroids in them.
Correct. I don't know anything about it. I don't know what lab. I don't know the name of the supplement.
Did you ask for this?
I did recently, and I think that they have their expert who will simply testify to it if need be to the
But
commission.
we have no idea of chain of custody of the supplement, whether or not it was the original supplement.
We don't know if somebody just done, unscrewed the bottle and put steroids in it. We don't know anything.
So, and that's why I hinted in the last matter, and I'll bring it up here for this is a different case, independent procurement and simultaneous testing. It didn't happen. I know nothing about it, and obviously I can ask the expert as you can what value they would give to that, and they would probably tell you it doesn't deserve any value. That said, he's admitting that it was in his system because of what he says was a contaminated supplement.
Mr.
So.
Freckles, are you moving for admission of the exhibits that are appended to the complaint?
I am, but more than that, I have 2 more exhibits, so I can hand them out to the commission now.
Thank you. And as you are doing the presentation of your case, Dr. Eichner is available on the phone for
Yes.
for questions?
Dr. Eichner, you're on the telephone, correct? If you need to speak, Dr. Eichner, please press *6.
Yes, I'm available.
Thank you, sir.
For
So,
the 2 new exhibits that are 13 and 14 that you're offering?
Correct, and those relate to Smurtle's reporting of the pre-fight and post-fight B specimens, where they again found the metabolite of drostanolone in the specimens.
so Lonzo, do you have any objections to the list of these exhibits being submitted for
I don't have any objections, no.
exhibits 1 through 14 are accepted?
Thank you. So, Commission, I want to briefly kind of finish my opening and then move on to Mr. Alonzo. Whatever the Commission wants to do, we can go from there. But I just want to say I already think you have enough in the record to make a finding because of what I said related to the 9th. It's not really challenged, and then you have the admission of using something. I leave it to you to weigh the credibility of that, given no independent procurement, no simultaneous reporting. But if it's gonna be what he testifies to, then it's an admission, and you can make a finding based upon his admission.
I have a quick timeline question. We tested on the 9th and the 31st. Were there any tests conducted in between that period of time?
Yes, Smyrtle conducted a test on the 19th and reported no adverse results.
Okay.
And Mr. Eccles, in addition to making your opening statement, though, you're going beyond that and you're doing the presentation of your case at this point, correct?
Yes, I am, because I think we have admissions, and I'm asking the matter to be submitted based upon the exhibits and the admissions.
Good deal. I've got a couple of questions of Dr. Eichner before we turn it over and then to the defense. If we
Okay.
could, please.
Dr. Eichner,
Yes.
I'm going to have the Attorney General swear you in again. Mr. Pope?
Hi, Dr. Eichner. Can you please represent to us that you're raising your right hand?
I am.
Thank you, sir. And do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Dr. Eichner, can you give us a recap or an explanation, hopefully in somewhat layman's terms, of the type of testing that your laboratory undertakes and the process and the procedure by which that you undertake that testing once you receive a sample from us?
Of course. We receive samples that have a unique athlete identifier number, so we don't ever see a name. And we get that and we log that into our laboratory information management system. And this is a forensic chain of custody program that we can monitor that sample from receipt all the way through to reporting. And we can't alter that until it's forensically sound. We get that sample, and depending on the menu, whether it's full steroids or whether it's an in-competition program, depending on the program we're doing, we'll run mass spectrometry as the screen. And what we look for there is any known prohibited substances in their program. And if we see something in that screen, we'll then go back to the initial urine container and get another aliquot, another specimen from that urine container, and run that and confirm that by mass spectrometry again. And we run all necessary controls. We have a negative control, a positive control, an internal standard to make sure we're definitely sure of what we find and identify is what it is.
And Dr. Eichner, is there a volume that you test pursuant to the mass spectrometry?
So
In other
for
words, a
steroids,
volume of the sample.
Sure. I mean, it really depends. And, you know, for RMS testing for testosterone, that usually uses more urine, maybe 10 milliliters. But for a regular screen and confirmation, we could probably do it in 1.5 to 2 milliliters at a time.
And what volumes then were used for the tests that were conducted on January 9th of Mr. Silva?
So we would have taken a 3 milliliter aliquot for the steroid testing and split it into 2. So it would have been 1.5 milliliters run at a time.
And what about the testing that was done on January 19th?
The same procedure.
And what about the testing then pre and post by for January 31st?
Our procedure is the same. The only thing different about the January 19th test was because nothing was detected in the screen, there was no confirmation. But every other process is the same.
Now, generally, or I guess from a global standpoint, are you familiar with how Quest, which is another laboratory that we use that is significantly more cost-effective or cheaper, for lack of a better word, how they conduct their testing? Are you generally aware of how they do that?
I'm generally aware, but not specifics, no.
And can you offer that general awareness then, please?
For looking for these kind of steroids, they would have to conduct mass spectrometry, either gas chromatography mass spectrometry or liquid chromatography mass spectrometry.
It's been described to me that the type of testing and the volume of the samples that is looked at by Smyrtle kind of tests with a finer net, or in other words, it's a more specified or more refined testing than what Quest may undertake. Do you have an opinion on that?
I can't talk specifically to what Quest does, but I can tell you that at the lab here, we specialize in performance-enhancing drugs. And this is what we do, and we're accredited for with the World Anti-Doping Agency. And so we test for a vast array of performance-enhancing drugs and their metabolites. And that's our business. We conduct we get put through a double-blind program several times per year, proficiency testing programs through the World Anti-Doping Agency accreditation as well. So we're always kept up to date and mainstream what the latest technologies are and the latest drugs and metabolites are, and we're kept very strict and with our testing procedure. So I can only comment on what we do in the accreditation process that we go through to make sure that we can identify these substances.
And the testing that was done of the A sample on both pre-fight and post-fight on January 31st resulted in positive findings, is that correct?
Yes, in the pre and the post-fight we found metabolites for drostanolone, that's correct.
And you also tested the B sample for the samples that were taken pre and post-fight on January 31st, is that correct?
Yes, we did.
And those two tested positive for the same substances?
That's correct. They confirmed the A finding.
I have no further questions.
Mr. Eccles?
I don't see a need for questions at this time.
Mr. Alonso?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. I'm Michael Alonso, and I'm here on behalf of Anderson Silva. Present with me today is Mr. Anderson Silva. Also is Mr. Paul Scott, who is our expert on anti-doping, and we can, however the commission wants to handle Mr. Scott's credentials, we can do that. There's also an interpreter here, so however you
Let's swear
want
them
to
in first.
proceed.
Mr. Pope?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Let's start with Mr. Silva. Mr. Silva, please raise your right hand. Sir, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. And Mr. Scott? Sir, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you, sir. And Mr. Eccles, who is sitting next to you?
This is Mrs. Mersch, and she can tell you her first name for the record.
Hello, Mrs. Mersh.
Christiane.
Thank you, ma'am. Are you a licensed interpreter?
Yes.
Are you licensed in Nevada or somewhere else?
No. Just in Brazil.
Okay. And do you swear to interpret truthfully and honestly today?
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I also understand we have Dr. Sample on the telephone. Dr. Sample?
Yes.
All right, we're going to swear you in as well. Mr. Pope?
Oh, I'm sorry. Sir, can you please represent to us that you're raising your right hand?
I am.
And do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Dr. Sample, can you just quickly tell us who you represent?
Certainly. I'm the Director of Science and Technology for the Employer Solutions business at Quest Diagnostics.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Alonso?
And Mr. Chairman, I think just procedurally then, I think in terms of exhibits, you have the exhibits that we attach to the answer. Beyond that, there are the litigation packets.
I'm sorry, I'm having difficulty hearing if there's any questions directed at me. I can't hear them.
Okay.
Are those mics active?
Those mics are active for television. They're not active for any other reason. So unfortunately,
So you're gonna have to speak up, in other words.
So, Mr. Chairman, the only thing, I would, 2 points on exhibits, that we would request to admit the exhibits that we attach to the answer, which are the, I believe the January 19th test results from Smyrtle and the 2 Quest steroid results pre-fight and post-fight. In addition to that, Mr. Scott will be relying, depending on obviously how this goes and how the commission wants to proceed, on the litigation packets that we received from Smyrtle and Quest through Mr. Eccles. So I don't know if there'll be any objection to that. We only have 1 copy, but they are the litigation packets that were provided to us through Mr. Eccles.
Mr. Eccles, do you have any objection to the acceptance of these exhibits? I think they're duplicate.
To the exhibits attached to his answer, no.
Okay. They are duplicate in some ways to the exhibits we've already accepted from the complaint?
Yes.
Correct. Thank you, they're accepted.
And are you moving to admit the litigation packets from the A and B samples by Smyrtle?
Well, I guess subject to Mr. Eccles, if Mr. Scott's going to refer to them, they are the litigation packets that were provided to us by your labs and through Mr. Eccles.
Those were 13 and 14 in our packet, correct?
Right, but we're talking about that's just a detail report.
Okay.
We're talking about the full litigation packet relative to
Do you
those
have an extra
reports.
copy of this?
We
The
don't.
litigation packet? Do you have any objection to the
very
litigation
long.
packet?
Well, so one thing is I don't see a need to have them in evidence. If the commission does, I have copies of only the Smyrtle tests from January 9th and the Smyrtle pre and post A and Bs for January 31st. I have copies of those if the commission wants it, because, and the reason I only have copies of those, because that's what I'm relying on in my case. So if you want the Quest packet, I don't have copies of that. But it was produced as part of the negotiations here.
I guess, Mr. Chairman, what I would offer to move this along is that maybe we can revisit the issue of admitting them, but Mr. Scott may need to refer to them, and we can deal with that issue at that point in time.
If he is gonna rely on them during his testimony, I think they need to be submitted to the commission for acceptance. So, and unfortunately, you don't have a copy of those to provide us.
And from that perspective, I don't know if any of the commissioners want a copy. But the point being, for to make the record clear though, is you're gonna want to have those to be admitted if he's going to provide testimony.
Well, then we would request that they be admitted.
No objection, I can hand them out.
Thank you. I am not a scientist.
Okay, I'm gonna hand these out in order. Let me just identify what I'm gonna hand out first. This is the Smyrtle litigation packet for the January 9 collection date. And so this relates to the A specimen.
But we do not have, were we discussing the Quest litigation packet or the Smyrtle?
Smyrtle. And so this is relative to the A specimen, and because there was a litigation packet produced but no request to test the Bs, there's no B specimen report for January 9th.
Can we give this a number so that the record can be clear?
Should we make this,
It states 15, or however.
4 in the answer?
Since they've offered it,
Okay.
then it would have to be exhibit 4 by the defense. Okay.
Okay, next I'm gonna hand out, this we can mark it, respondents, or defense 5.
And Dr. Eichner, I assume you have these in your possession as well?
I do, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, this is gonna be testing for the collection date of January 31, and this is going to be the pre-fight A.
Thank you.
Okay, this is going to be testing on January 31. They asked for the pre-fight B to be tested, so that's this litigation packet. And I'm gonna mark it respondent 6.
This is pre-fight B?
Yes.
Thank you.
Sir, just for the record, did you say what respondents 5 was?
358 on the 31st.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna hand out what I've marked as respondent 7. This is the post-fight A from January 31.
7.
This is post-fight A.
And may I address Mr. Eccles, please? That does not include the litigation packets for the Quest pre-fight and post-fight
Correct.
steroid tests?
Correct.
So, so there was a Quest fight too, that was pre and post fight, the A samples were tested, and then were there B samples tested for that, those samples?
There was A samples that were tested that, and obviously we'll get into that in more detail, that we thought were for drugs of abuse. There was a negative result on that. There was also an A test for anabolic steroids Quest on fight night, pre-fight. Then we requested that the B sample that was for the benzos, the post-fight test, be tested for steroids, and that was just recently done by Quest. And Mr. Eccles provided us with litigation packets for that.
Okay. So there was no B on the pre-fight Quest test?
Correct.
Okay.
And do you have those litigation packets, and are you intending to offer them as exhibits?
Mr. Scott has a copy of them, and I'm sorry, I thought they would be provided because they're the Commission's lab's litigation packets, so we have copies of them. I think for the record to be clear, they should be admitted.
I think I agree, and I think if you have a copy to submit, but do you need those for your testimony?
It would likely be helpful. I don't know where the testimony is going.
Do you object to him using those documents during his testimony? Do you have a copy of these exhibits? So for the record, we can make exhibit 9.
I don't object to it. I would have to go to my office to get a copy of it.
Okay. Well, let's just continue with the exhibits that they're submitting. So exhibit 9 would be the pre-fight Quest test sample A, correct?
Right.
Pre-Quest, pre-fight sample A.
And was the sample A, as you indicated, only for drugs of abuse, correct?
No, it's both.
It was both, and I guess that's why I'm a little unclear on, we didn't find out about the sample A for anabolic steroids until much later. So I assume they were two different tests. We received the litigation packet, or there was no litigation packet, I'm sorry, let me be clear. There was no litigation packet created for the pre-fight A drugs of abuse because it was a negative result. But there was a sample that was negative for anabolic steroids provided by Quest. When we found out about it, we requested the litigation packet. So that exists. Then there was a post-fight A for drugs of abuse that tested positive for the benzos that are in the referenced in the First Amendment complaint. When we found out about the pre-fight A sample for anabolic steroids, we requested that post-fight B be tested for anabolic steroids, and it was subsequently tested. And the litigation packet was produced for that.
In sum, all of the testing, whether it be of A or B samples from either Smyrtle or Quest, have been conducted. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Well, any of the ones that have been requested have been done, and you have the results from those, correct?
That's correct.
And any of the litigation packets that you have requested have been given to you. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. And you're intending to offer now as additional exhibits some of those litigation packets from Quest?
I am.
And can you identify then, for purposes of the record, what would be then these exhibits as next in line?
The first exhibit would be, which I think would be 9, would be the Quest pre-fight A sample that was tested for anabolic steroids. And I'm not trying to be unclear on purpose. I just don't know if there were two separate tests, one for drugs of abuse, and or they were all part of the same sample. I don't think we would
But
have
that doesn't matter,
information.
what you're submitting is the report, the litigation report for the A sample for anabolic steroids,
Right. And
which is number 9. Okay.
Number 10 would be the Quest post-fight B sample for anabolic steroids that we requested.
Okay, I just want to be clear in the record on that, so everybody's on the same page. Quest tested pre-fight for steroids and diuretics. Quest tested post-fight for drugs of abuse. And so I think what we're admitting is respondents 10 is this. They're not, and let me be clear, they're not challenging the benzodiazepines, which is what Quest found.
What we're trying to do is just get the documents in order here, and we can get to.
Okay.
What I'm trying to get is everybody to have a consensus and understanding of what exhibits exist. So,
Okay.
are you in agreement with exhibit number 9?
Yes.
Okay. Then for exhibit number 10, it's Quest litigation packet for the B sample for anabolic steroids.
Yes. But I hesitate just because I want to be clear that that's right, but Quest tested a post-fight A for drugs of abuse, and that's when the benzos came up. But because it came back positive for something, they, according to their procedure, they retained the B. I agreed that the B would be tested for a steroid panel, and I think that's what we agree we're admitting into evidence.
And Mr. Chairman, for the record, just to be clear, there was a separate litigation package provided to us for the post-fight Quest A sample for the benzos that we're not, we have it, but
You're not submitting it.
we're not submitting that at this point.
And you're not contesting the validity of the positive finding on the benzos?
We're not.
Now everybody has a good understanding of what exhibits have been submitted for evidence, and you will move forward with your.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, oh, I will accept. Everybody has laid out.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, we are here today in connection with the First Amendment complaint that was filed by the commission against Mr. Silva. I think before I get into the summary, it's important to note that Mr. Silva has had a long career in MMA, and before this commission has never had a blemish or any other negative test. And I think it's also important to say he cooperated with every one of the tests that was asked of him, including the January 9th and the 19th out of competition testing. Our summary of Mr. Silva's responses to the allegations of the First Amendment complaint are as follows. With respect to all the allegations related to his use or administration of anabolic steroids, Mr. Silva denies that he ever willingly, intentionally, or knowingly took anabolic steroids. After the First Amendment complaint was filed, we all met with Mr. Silva, including Mr. Paul Scott, and again, I'm happy to, for the questioning of Mr. Scott and to get his background and as an expert at whatever point the commission so chooses. We met with Mr. Silva and went through the complaint with him. He maintained that he had never intentionally or knowingly taken any anabolic steroids. As a result, we determined through Mr. Scott that we had to find the source of the two substances that came up in the test results from Smyrtle. At that point, we didn't know about the Quest results. Mr. Silva provided Mr. Scott a list of supplements, and Mr. Scott tested those supplements, and he can get into more detail, the technical detail of what his findings were.
Can you be more specific? He provided him a list, or he provided him the actual supplements he had in his possession?
He provided them with
Specific
both.
Both.
With both, Commissioner Marnell and Mr. Scott. I just, it's very technical, so I'd rather have him handle it, but yes, he provided them with both.
And do you have a list of those supplements that were being ingested both in the January 9th timeframe as well as the January 31st timeframe?
Yeah, Mike.
So I have the list of supplements that were provided to me on my computer. I don't have anything that can speak to what was being taken.
So in
I have
other
the
words-
list that was provided to me. That's
Right.
what I have.
So Dr. Scott is it
Mister.
Dr.? So Dr. Scott has a list of supplements that was provided to him. And does your client then acknowledge that he was ingesting those supplements in the January 9th and the January 31st time?
I think he'll acknowledge that he was taking them on. The dates I'm not clear on, but yes, he was ingesting those.
All right, so he was ingesting those, but you're unclear as to the dates, and so when we talk to him, we can ask him those questions. Is that what you're suggesting?
Yes, I believe that at least one of the supplements, the one that we're focused on, he was ingesting on a regular basis in the time frame. I'm just not clear on the other supplements on when he started or stopped those. And so,
Mr. Scott, real quick, he testified that he is a doctor.
I did not. Again, I'm Mr.
Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Okay.
My apologies.
No, it's quite all right.
I'm trying to flatter you, I
No,
guess.
it's all good.
he's a juris
I have a
doctor.
BS and a JD
JD, give you the.
in Europe,
All right.
not here.
All right. I'll let Mr. Alonso continue with his opening statement, how about that?
And again, Mr. Scott can get into more detail on this. One of the supplements, the supplement that came up as contaminated with drostanolone, Mr. Scott can go through what he questioned Mr. Silva about and what that supplement was used for. We did not find, for the record, any of the supplements that were contaminated with the 17-methyl-androstane. But the one supplement did test positive for drostanolone. And just to clear the record, it didn't test positive for drostanolone metabolite, it tested positive for drostanolone. And again, the androstenedione that was detected by Smyrtle, we did not find that. My understanding is it was a trace amount that was found in the January 9th test. It did not come back in the 19th test or in any of the pre or the post-fight Smyrtle or Quest results on the 31st. And that's why I think in our answer we responded that given that Mr. Silva's position is he did not knowingly or intentionally take any anabolic steroids, that the androstenedione, and it was a trace amount, came back as a result of some contamination of the supplement. We have no other source for it. I'd like to turn to the fight night test results involving Quest. And again, we understand that there are the Smyrtle results that Mr. Eccles referred to, but I just want to give the commission an understanding of how the Quest results unfolded for us. In early April, Mr. Eccles contacted me and told me that there was some finding by Quest that he was still looking into and he would get back to me. Several weeks later, he was conferring with the toxicologist. He got back to me on April 17th and told me that Quest had performed an anabolic steroid panel on the part of their pre-fight testing. And we were unaware of this until April of this year. And that test came back negative for anabolic steroids, including drostanolone and the 17-methyl-androstane. There was no positive findings for any anabolic steroid. On the 17th is when we requested two things. We requested the litigation packet for that test, that particular test, and because there was a positive result for the benzos on the Quest post-fight test, we knew there would be a B sample, so we requested that B sample be tested for anabolic steroids. And the reason for that was obvious. We were trying to do an apples-to-apples comparison to see if the Quest results would come back the same way. It took some time for that to be agreed to, but ultimately, my understanding is that Quest tested that on July 8th, and those results were reported to us on July 22nd. And so that would have been the post-fight anabolic steroid test on the B sample for Quest, and those results were negative. They confirmed negative. So in summary, the fight night test.
On the B sample or the A sample on the post-fight, there was a trace of the benzos? On the
A
Quest.
sample, there were the benzos. And
On the Quest.
that's correct,
So then you tested the B sample,
for anabolic steroids.
and that B sample came out negative with no trace of what was previously confirmed in the A sample.
No,
No,
they
they
didn't
didn't.
test it.
We didn't test for the benzos on the
Benzos.
B sample.
We
We're
only
admitting
tested for
the
steroids.
benzos, we're not
Okay.
contesting the benzos.
Got it, thank you.
So in summary of the fight night test, the complaint alleges that there's violations by Mr. Silva for the use or administration of the banned substances either before or during a contest in connection with the fight night test. And those allegations are based upon the Smyrtle test, which doesn't, the complaint, our position is just doesn't provide all the facts there. The complaint was amended There was an initial complaint, and then it was amended when the benzos test came back. But the complaint was never amended to deal with the Quest negative results that came back, and that's why we're going through this in detail. We're going through it because we did not find out about that until obviously April, and then confirmation that on the second test in July. So we have a situation here where you have, for fight night at least, you have positive tests for anabolic steroids by one lab that is used by the commission, and negative results for anabolic steroids by another lab that the commission uses. Again, we did not request that those, we didn't request them, other than once the pre-fight test confirmed negative, and we were made aware of that we asked that B sample for post-night be tested, because we thought it was relevant so the commission could see you ultimately have 2 positive tests and 2 negative tests for those pre and post-fight tests. Also, we want to point out for the commission, Mr. Scott, this is where this gets very technical as well. Based on what Mr. Scott has been able to look at in terms of the Smyrtle tests and the levels, and I'm going to butcher the description because this isn't my forte, but and so when you compare the Quest tests, the negative results on the anabolic steroids, to the Smyrtle tests, and you look at the levels and how those differing decisions were made, and, it is our position that had a Quest test been done on January 9th, you'd have a negative result. Quest would have come back with a negative result for the drostanolone. I have no position on the 17-methyl-androstenedione because we weren't able to get that far. But for the drostanolone, hypothetically, had you had a Quest, the circumstances are very similar, and had you had a test there, so ultimately you could have a situation where you have a positive and negative test going each direction for every one of the tests that we're dealing with on anabolic steroid. With respect to the allegations in the complaint regarding Mr. Silva's use or administration of 2 benzos, Mr. Silva will acknowledge and admit that he used the benzos the night before the fight, and used them. He couldn't sleep, he had back pain, he had some anxiety, and so he took those. But he does disagree with the allegations that he failed to disclose them. He turned in the medical questionnaire on the 30th. He didn't take or administer the benzos until that night. So in terms of, that wasn't something that he thought about, and he can tell you in his own words, but he's admitting that he used them, he took them, and took them for a reason. It wasn't for performance enhancing. In fact, it probably would have done the exact opposite. But that's the reason that he took them, and we're admitting that and not contesting that they were in the system and that he used them. So based on, and I want to go back to just to touch on the testing of the supplement, and Mr. Scott can go into detail on this, and hopefully it'll help to explain why we're taking this position. You have the drostanolone on the 9th, you have it on the 31st, pre and post fight for Smyrtle tests. You have these Quest tests that come out with negative results. In between the 9th and the 31st, you have a test on the 19th that comes back Smyrtle negative. And you have a supplement that's found to have drostanolone in it, but he's taking for another purpose. He wasn't taking it for performance enhancing, didn't know it had contained any anabolic steroids. That's what Mr. Silva will testify to. And all we're trying to do to put this all together is that it's consistent with him taking something that was contaminated. It wasn't intentional, he didn't do it knowingly. You have small amounts on the 9th, you have none on the 19th, you have amounts on the 31st pre and post fight, but that also result in negative test results for those pre and those post fight tests. And that's the summary of our position. And based on that, we understand that it's a strict liability standard. I think there's a question here, and obviously the chain of custody and how that was all done, we don't disagree with Mr. Eccles on that at all. We did this on our own. Mr. Scott has impeccable credentials. He can walk you through what happened on the testing of the supplement. But I think even just the point is, even though the statute is a strict liability statute, there has to be room in the intent of that, the statute and the regulations, that if somebody is taking something for a different purpose and it is contaminated with something that's on the banned list, that has to be taken into consideration. And whether it's this case or maybe another case, sometimes there may be something, we don't see it very often in the United States maybe with pharmacies, but it does happen in other places, and Mr. Scott can address that as well. And so I think, our answer, as you've seen, we're asking that he not be found in violation of the statute. I mean, that's our first position, based on factors that we've outlined here today, and hopefully can provide additional evidence to the commission. But alternatively, we're not contesting that the 17-methyl-androstenedione was in there. We don't know. We don't have a source for it. And that if you find that he violated the regulations, that you treat him as a first-time offender, and you take into consideration that all of his history, that he's never tested positive, he's never had an issue with the commission or any other commission. You take into consideration his age, the fact that he cooperated with the tests, including the out-of-competition test, without any worry whatsoever. As far as I understand from the record, there was no concern whatsoever on his part. You take all those things into consideration. And I don't know, again, Mr. Chairman, how you're going to get to the rest of what we're going to do here today, but I would like an opportunity to talk a little bit more potentially about penalties before you get to deliberation.
I think before we get into deliberations, I'll close with you, so at that point in time, you'll be able to make any comments you want. And as far as your witness, we're gonna, if you want to take the lead on the questions and the presentation of your witness.
May I ask 2 points though before we move to from an evidentiary? Mr. Alonso, on behalf of Mr. Silva, do you acknowledge that there's been full disclosure by the Attorney General of all testing that was conducted of Mr. Silva, either by Smyrtle or by Quest?
Commissioner Longo, I think that Mr. Eccles has been very cooperative, and I can't answer completely because I don't know how the test occurred, and we didn't find out about it until April. We didn't know there was another test for anabolic steroids until April, so I don't know the factors behind those. Results were reported to the commission in February, in early February. We didn't find out about them until April. But yes, other than that, how that occurred, they've provided us with everything and have cooperated with us.
Right. But do you acknowledge, though, that he has provided all information, whether it be from Quest or from Smyrtle, that you have requested him to provide?
Yes, yes.
All right. Second question then is, do you acknowledge that this commission had jurisdiction in January 9th in particular of 2015, by which to do the out-of-competition testing?
I do.
And do you acknowledge then that we had jurisdiction on January 19th as well as on January 31st then, by which to conduct the testing that was done on Mr. Silva?
I do.
Thank you. Those are the positional questions that will help, I think, speed up some of the testing. Thank you.
If I can turn it over to Mr. Scott to, I think, cover the 2 points that we talked about, and maybe introduce himself to the commission and give you his background.
That'd be appreciated.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I have one issue with that. So if we're gonna get into expert testimony, I've got 2 experts. They're toxicologists. Barry Sample from Quest provided his CV, which is attached to the litigation packet. He's testified before this commission before in his capacity as an expert toxicologist. Dr. Daniel Eichner has testified before this commission before as an expert toxicologist. So I just need to be clear in the record. I don't know that they're objecting to my experts' status as experts and toxicologists, but I want to make it clear that Mr. Scott's testifying. He said he had a BS and a JD, so I want to make it clear that I'm not sure he's qualified to testify as an expert or as an expert toxicologist, because this is obviously very technical, complicated, data for which a person may want to have a degree such as a PhD level or something and actually be working for a laboratory. So it was my mistake. We didn't resolve that ahead of time. I had assumed he was a doctor in a natural science. So,
Mr. Eccleston, 2 points as far as in response to what you just said. You have the opportunity for rebuttal, so that in the event that it becomes necessary to provide rebuttal testimony from either Dr. Sample or from Dr. Eichner, that opportunity is afforded to you. In second, if you have a challenge then to the credentials then of Mr. Scott, you have the ability during the rebuttal then by which to present that challenge.
thank you.
So I'm gonna ask a question, Mr. Alonso, what will he be testifying to?
The things that we summarized, Mr. Avancino, so the testing of the supplements and that process and what he found, and the assertion that we've made that had Quest tested the January 9th sample, it would have come back negative, and what he bases that on.
And I think Commissioner Lundvall asked those questions earlier of Dr. Eichner as to, what it is that Swirtle does, what it is that Quest does, and I think we have an understanding of that perspective. But it is your witness. Have you been provided the reports that they're gonna refer to as far as the supplements being tested?
No.
Okay. So are you looking to submit those reports on the supplements to us as evidence?
We don't have written reports, we're just having Mr. Scott provide you with the
So
information.
Mr. Scott, then, the supplements that were tested, can you explain the process of how those supplements were tested? Because I don't know how, if there's no report.
I
I
think
it's
that,
on the conundrum, but-
Or the Mr. Scott.
Go ahead.
I think that he can provide oral testimony, you can consider what it has been described.
But I'm just trying to, the exchange of information, I think, Mr. Eckel, to have that opportunity to look at it. So go ahead, I'm sorry.
So my name is Paul Scott. I am the president of Scott Analytics and Corva Laboratories. I was a director of client services at the UCLA Olympic Analytical Laboratory. That is the water accredited laboratory at UCLA that does anti-doping testing. From 2004 to 2006, I left there to form a company called the Agency for Cycling Ethics, which does independent anti-doping services principally to cycling teams, and left.
What was your position with the laboratory at UCLA?
Director of Client Services.
Okay, and can you identify then what you did as Director of Client Services?
So I would, I had a variety of tasks. Starting in 2004, my principal function was to review contracts and discuss discovery materials when a discovery request would come in for litigation. Sometime along, I'd say somewhere in late 2004, early 2005, I transitioned to being exclusively administrative in that sense, to overseeing in tandem with our PhD, Andreas Briebach, the EPO section. This is a specialized form of testing, not applicable here. And when he left in early 2006 or late 2005, and I've simply forgotten, I took over as the head of the EPO subsection at the lab until I left in October of 2006 to form the Agency for Cycling Ethics.
And within that lab then, it sounds like that your summary then would be that you either had administrative or business responsibility, but not technical responsibility in the testing.
At the outset, that is certainly true. By the time I had left, I was in control of the testing as it related to EPL at the laboratory.
I mean, you're talking about being in control of it. Did you actually do the testing?
I directed the testing. I did not do the testing myself. I was not a chemist, a technician, but I would review all of the negative and positive results that came out of the laboratory and would submit those to confirmation testing or to Dr. Catlin, who was the director of the laboratory at the time, if we were going to generate a positive test.
How long were you in that position?
From either late 2005 or early 2006 until I left the laboratory in October of 2006.
So approximately 10 months.
10 months, yes. From there, I formed the Agency for Cycling Ethics, which, as I said, is an independent anti-doping agency that had provided private anti-doping services to primarily cycling teams. In April of 2008, I left the Agency for Cycling Ethics to form another company, Scott Analytics, which provided similar services to a larger athletic client base, but principally internal anti-doping programs, and I've been at that position since.
The actual functions though that you provided, whether it be through cycling ethics or through Scott Analytics, was it similar to what you did when you were with the lab at UCLA?
It certainly encompassed those things. It also encompassed other aspects. The principal service that we provide is the biological analysis of biomarkers to detect the likelihood of anti-doping, whether it be steroid or blood doping for our internal clients. So I am responsible there for developing the anti-doping programs, for analyzing the results and submitting reports to our clients if we have an anti-doping violation.
But when I focus specifically when you say analyzing the results, you're talking about being given test results from either the chemist or the folks in the laboratory. You weren't actually conducting.
I was not a technician. I did not conduct the tests. That's correct. I analyzed the results from the tests.
So it'd be administrative business control, and then you would take the reports in that were being given to you by the chemist and the other lab technicians.
No, it's a little more complicated than that, at least as it refers to the biological parameter testing. So the result itself from an analysis, for instance, someone's hematocrit, their hemoglobin, their reticulocyte, etc. That is an analytical result, but it doesn't result directly in any sort of indication of drug use independent of the collection of that data and analysis. So I take part on the development of the methodologies used for determining whether something is adverse or not, and in interpreting that data, but not in generating the actual hematocrit or hemoglobin, etc.
Thank you.
And your experience to get that knowledge base was all based on your time at the UCLA lab?
Based on that and the review of the literature and discussions with other scientists, and I should also say I was at one point a technician. This is long ago before law school. I was at the UCLA lab as a technician doing sample analysis. I don't know, back in 1985 through '89, something like that.
Anything more about your background?
No.
Scott? No? Can you tell us what you did?
I'm sorry?
Biology, chemistry.
Oh, I have a BS in biology and chemistry.
Tell us what you did.
As a
No, here.
oh yeah, here, okay. Yeah, thank you. So
Yeah.
yeah, so at some point earlier this year, I think it would have been around February or maybe March, I was contacted by Nathan Gable to review some data that had been generated by the Smyrtle laboratory. I analyzed that data, provided them with what I saw on it, and suggested to them that there was nothing wrong with the data that I saw, and that I offered to attend a B-sample if they had decided to do it. They did not on those samples. And I suggested to them at that point a course of action would be to start examining everything that the athlete ingested. And I was at some point given a list of supplements and an accompanying set of photographs of the labels for those supplements. I gave them recommendations on testing as to where we should start. And some of which were produced by pharmaceutical companies such as Roche, and I'm forgetting the other one. There were 2 pharmaceutical companies. I suggested there was practically no chance that anything would be in a pharmaceutical product, and we didn't test those at all. I subjected the remaining supplements, which I believe were 4 or 5 different supplements, 1 liquid and several powders, to LCMS testing for both drostanolone and for 17-methyl androstenediol. None of the testing showed any 17-methyl androstenediol. There were trace amounts of drostanolone propionate in one of the supplements. That supplement was something that was represented to me. It was a liquid supplement, and it was represented to me to be a supplement for sexual performance.
All right, so in summary, you didn't do any testing of the Roche supplements. There were 4 to 5 additional supplements, and you did submit those non-Roche supplements then to testing.
Correct.
Okay? All right, and approximately how many were the Roche supplements?
I think there were 2 medications. I think I received a total of 7 supplements, 5 of which were subjected to testing.
And was it represented to you at that point in time that the athlete was ingesting those 7 supplements?
The supplements were provided to me in response to my request for any supplement or medication that the athlete was taking. So since it came to me in response to that question, I presume that these were supplements that were being taken, yes.
Thank you.
So you received those from counsel or from?
I received them, I believe, from Nathan Gable, who I know is an attorney. He's not counsel, and I received them by common carrier.
But my question is, did Mr. Silva give those to Nathan Gable?
I assume he did. I don't have any direct knowledge that that happened. I assume that is what happened because that was my request.
So we know there was a list of items that were given, but we don't know if it's all the items that he was taking. It's just some items that were given to him?
The items that were provided to me were provided in response to my question for him to list and generate all of the supplements he was taking. I, of course, cannot speak to the truth of that statement. I simply accept it as truthful.
Do you have the list?
I actually do have the list on my computer if you'd like me to get it out.
I guess, do you have the test results of where you said this and what it came back with?
I can tell you that none of the samples tested positive for 17-methyl androstenediol, and that 1 of the supplements tested positive for drostanolone. I can have those that data generated. I do not have it here with me.
I'm just curious. This is a hearing on this man's career and what he's tested positive for. You would think you would want to introduce all of this to evidence. Just kind of, you know, if you were provided all this and you have the list and you have the pictures and you have the tests, why wouldn't this commission get them today?
Well,
Why
I
would
think,
they submit it to opposing?
Why wouldn't you have submitted it to the opposing counsel so he can review it? Why wouldn't you take those actual items and actually send them to Smyrtle and let them test them as well? I'm just, it's, I don't know a better word to use, but it's all keep going.
well, Commissioner Marnell, we don't have any way of providing the chain of custody. We never had that from the beginning of where those things came from. We asked Mr. Silva about them, that's how we got them. We tested them to the best of our ability.
I would agree that your chain of custody argument would be horrible in any event, but at least your testing quality would be.
I mean, we have litigation packets for the samples from both Smyrtle and Quest, but the fact that we don't have similar information that was provided to the Attorney General's office or provided to us today, it's based off of your oral testimony, but it's hard for us to believe based on the argument that I think you're trying to make, it would have been better perceived had there been some basis or documentation for us to review and allow our opposing counsel to review as well.
Yeah. To be clear, I simply was never requested, so that's why I don't have them. I can tell you that I can both generate the results.
So you never submitted to counsel or to Mr. Silva any documentation
Correct.
of the results?
That's correct.
This has all been oral
This has been,
conversation?
yes, oral
And
conversations.
all you have done is test the items that were given to you by Mr. Silva.
Again, they were not given to me
Well,
directly by
all
Mr.
right.
Silva, but yes.
And my question too would be is whether or not were these substances
We don't
disclosed
know.
on the pre-fight questionnaire?
We don't know whether they're all the substances, do we? All we're doing is relying on what he has said was taken by him or used by him during the process.
Absolutely. I have no way to confirm or deny the truth of any of that. I simply am accepting it.
Mr. Scott, as part of this testing that you did in the February and March timeframe, the supplements that were given to you, did they include the sexual performance enhancer that was identified as being contaminated in the answer to our complaint?
I have not read the answer, but I assume from your question the answer is yes. The vial that I was given that tested positive for trace amounts of drostanolone propionate was provided to me in that group of supplements that I was given.
And what was the substance?
I have no way of knowing what the substance was. It was unlabeled. It was in a clear dark blue vial that had to be broken to open.
So there's no proof that these substances were consumed prior to the test. These could all be sent to you as post facto.
I have no way of confirming or denying any of that, yes.
I'm a little interested though in this unlabeled substance, okay? What you're telling me is it didn't come in any type of standard package,
That's correct.
and it had no label.
It had no label.
You don't know if it was a prescription substance or if it was an over-the-counter substance. No representation was made to you one way versus another.
I believe in terms of a representation, but I guess I'm going to go on my memory. I believe that this was not a prescription medication.
Do you know how this particular substance was being administered by the athlete?
The only way to administer this stuff would have been to ingest it orally.
Okay, so it's something liquid was in the vial, and in your opinion, the only way to ingest that would be to ingest it?
Well, I shouldn't actually say that. Of course, one could also inject it, but the way that if what is in that bottle is represented to me as accurate, the way you take that is orally.
Right, but you don't know what the name or
I
what
can-
the
I can tell you that it
chemical properties
was-
of that substance would be. And I'm going to try to do my very best not to talk over the top of you.
so sorry.
And I'm going to
I-
ask the same
I
courtesy in
apologize.
exchange for you, all right?
Absolutely.
There's a record that's going to be being created, and it's real tough for those people taking down 50 talking about it, okay? Now, and so back to my question, that being is that you do not know either a name or an identifier than what was in this particular blue box.
It has been represented to me that it was Cialis, but not prescription, not Cialis by the trade name, but instead a form of Cialis that was obtained not through prescription.
I just want to make a point of information. I'm going to lose a commissioner in about 10 minutes, so I'd like to condense this for this testimony to continue within the next 5 minutes and wrap it up so that we can get to deliberation before 1 o'clock. There's no objection. I think the point has been established and the record shows that we do have the test. The tests have been validated. They've been accepted. There's been an admission from the respondent. And so I think what we're trying to do now is go through some of the mitigating circumstances, but I think we all understand perspective. So if there's any objection to that time frame, order of business going forward in the next few minutes.
Well, I guess I just want, for the record, want to understand that, what we were trying to do was, Mr. Silva is maintaining he didn't knowingly or intentionally take an analog steroid. We're just trying to get the commission to where we got to of how this possibly could have ended up in the system.
So, maybe, I'm going to interrupt you, so go ahead and finish your question. I'll go next.
Well, the only comment that I wish to make is I want to make sure that they have the full opportunity to present a defense. And I don't want to have any issue unless there's going to be some type of a waiver of a challenge to what it is that
Well,
we
that's why I'm
intend to do.
asking the question and trying to express what I'm trying to accomplish, but if there's an objection to that, I will reevaluate based on what we need to do moving forward.
The time constraints removed. Proceed, please, so we can get on with this.
Pardon me?
We have no
We
time
have no
constraint.
time constraint. Go ahead.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt, I was just trying to manage.
Go ahead. Finish about the blue vial.
I have no further on the blue vial unless you have questions about it.
Level.
No further questions on the file.
My questions would be directed towards Mr. Silva, as far as the representation that this gentleman is making is that you were taking the substance in the blue vial, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And why don't you tell me what was in it and what you were using it for? I think we've heard them, but I'd like to hear you say what you were using it for.
Primeiro é um assunto pessoal meu, né? Eu acho que eu tenho que falar pra ele por que eu tava tomando isso. Eu acho que...
Okay, so this is his particular subject.
Yeah.
Sorry?
Is his particular, he said his particular subject is his business why he was taking this substance.
So he refuses to answer the question.
So there's no answer to the question?
Yes, no
Okay.
answer.
Now,
If
but let me ask this question though, in response to
Can I
that.
finish that, please?
No, I just want to know if he's taking the fifth on this. He's pleading the Fifth Amendment.
You are taking He was.
Okay. If I retract back then to the testimony provided by your expert witness and/or the attorney, it's for sexual performance. I guess my question would be, and take fifth on this too, why wouldn't you just go get a doctor and get a prescription for Cialis or Viagra versus take blue vial or substance with a vial with blue liquid in it that you didn't even really know what it was? I mean, you could go to any doctor pretty much in America and get Viagra or Cialis, or the real stuff from a real pharmacy.
Porque eu não fui no médico pedir inscrição pro médico.
He could not go to the doctor after this prescription. Before.
You will not?
He could not go. He didn't want to go. Isso sim que ele pediu.
I don't have anything else, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Continue, please.
If I could just turn it over to Mr. Scott again to talk about the January 9th test, just for the record, had the Quest test been performed?
Sure.
Thank you.
Of course, there's no way to be 100% certain of anything with regard to this, but I will just say this. The Smyrtle testing resulted in a concentration of approximately 13 nanograms per mil on all of the tests that were analyzed for drostanolone. So presumably, since Quest twice comes back as negative at that concentration found in Smyrtle through semi-quantitation, by the way, this is not a quantitative analysis. Presumably, it would also come back as negative on the 9th because there's no difference in concentration in the three samples.
So if I understand your testimony, you're presuming that a Quest would have tested the samples taken in January 9th specifically, that the Quest testing would have come up negative.
Yeah, there's no reason to believe otherwise.
All right, notwithstanding the fact that you acknowledge that you tested a vial that was being ingested by this athlete and that you found it was contaminated with drostanolone.
Yes, that's correct. I'm speaking only to the testing.
All right, and so the Quest testing in your testimony then would have been negative on January 9th as well as on January 31st, pre and post vial.
I think that's the only reasonable conclusion.
Thank you. Any further testimony?
No, I'm going to turn it over to, you can ask Mr. Silva questions.
I just want to confirm you've had enough time to present your case and to present any testimony you need for us. I'm just trying to recover from what we discussed earlier.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Scott, did
Do
you
you
want
want
to
to take some time, Mr. Alonso, to determine whether you're satisfied? Because we did sort of take the shoes out from under you there.
Can we take
I'll give you a 2-minute recess.
okay, thank you.
Seeing that the translator is now available, go ahead.
So, Mr. Chairman, and I'll ask with Mr. Eccles' permission, and I don't mean this in any negative way at all, that Mr. Silva feels like his testimony didn't get the context of it, maybe didn't get translated properly. So Ed Soares is here, and he's also fluent in Portuguese. So we could maybe swear him in, and you could check to make sure he's translating properly, but I think it's important, especially the answers that came across to your questions, Commissioner Marnell, I think taken completely, they're out of context, and we need to address them. It's really important.
Okay. Mr. Suarez, please come forward. You'll be sworn in by Mr. Cope.
Sir, please raise your right hand. Do you swear to translate truthfully and honestly here today?
Yeah, I do.
Thank you, sir.
And Mr. Suarez, what is your role with Mr. Silva?
I'm his friend, his advisor, and we've been with him throughout his career in fighting in the UFC.
Okay, are you his manager?
Yes, I also work as that also.
Are you a licensed manager in the state of Nevada? Okay, thank you.
You are?
No, I'm not.
Sorry.
Are managers required to be licensed in the state of Nevada? I don't know.
I'm a licensed agent. I'm a licensed agent internationally. Nationally, but I'm not a licensed manager in the state of Nevada.
Okay. So do you want to repeat
So
the
why don't we
client
start
question?
from scratch? My question was very simple. What was Mr. Silva's understanding of what was in the vial with the blue liquid, and what was he using it for?
And before he answers, let me clarify what Mr. Scott said. It was a blue vial with clear liquid. And I don't.
My apologies, I've got it reversed. A blue vial with clear liquid.
Thank you.
Can you say it louder, please, so she can hear too?
O que estava na garrafinha azul? O que você estava tomando e por que você estava tomando isso?
O que tinha na garrafinha azul era uma espécie de estimulante sexual e um amigo meu trouxe da Tailândia e eu estava usando e não fui no médico pedir uma autorização para o médico porque esse tipo de suplemento não tem nos Estados Unidos nem no Brasil.
What was in the supplement was a sexual enhancement supplement, and the reason I didn't go to the doctors is because this particular supplement they don't have here in the U.S. or in Brazil. My friend brought it from Thailand, and that's why I was taking that. It was because I couldn't go to a doctor to get this particular substance that was working.
Can I go back to the original statement? And is the response that Mr. Silva just provided and the way it was translated different from the original response you heard?
Was a little different because he put more words now. He just said that was his business, that the reason he could not go to the doctor, that he was using this substance was his business, and he didn't want to answer. He didn't say about there's no this drug in Brazil. So he changed, he just put more words. So it's the reason I just translate what he said before.
Okay.
But I think the clarification was that there was the notion that he was pleading the fifth was not, he wasn't pleading the fifth. He was saying it was his personal business.
Well, Commissioner
and now
Lundevall
he's
did a
answered.
pretty good job of clarifying that, and it was affirmed. But anyway, that, I guess, unless you want to...
No, well, it's going to
Do
be,
that.
we can evaluate this in our
Yeah,
deliberation
I
as
mean,
to whether or not.
I think what really it was is a little bit lost in translation. I don't think she translated it wrong. I think that the way he said it and the way she translated it is where it was wrong. What he was saying, it was a personal issue, not that he didn't want to answer you. He was just saying it was a personal issue, why he was taking it, and the way it was expressed didn't come off exactly in the context that he was meaning to. Is what I'm saying.
So
Well, we
with,
have that clarified now.
Okay,
so
cool.
let's-
And
So
now,
with-
can you explain why it is that he was taking this supplement that was given to him from a friend that had traveled with it from Thailand?
Agora você pode explicar por que você estava tomando esse remédio que teu amigo trouxe da Tailândia?
Porque é um assunto pessoal, né? Assim, é um estimulante sexual. Para que a gente toma um estimulante sexual?
He says the reason he was taking it is a personal reason because it's a sexual stimulant, and that's why he was taking it, is because to help him in that area.
And Ms. Mersch, is that what you heard?
Yes, he said it was his particular business and he was taking because he wants.
And so he's identified that it is his personal business, and he's refusing then to explain that personal business.
But he has the knowledge that was enhancing sexual appeal.
Thank you.
Did it ever cross your mind taking a clear substance in a blue vial from a friend that came from Thailand with a fighter of your stature and all that you have on the line and all that you've come back from might not be a good move?
Já passou pela tua cabeça que você, o nível de atleta que você é, lutador, por tudo que você já voltou, tudo que você já passou, tomando suplemento que estava vindo numa garrafinha azul, isso qualquer momento passou pela tua cabeça?
Não. Assim, se eu tivesse a noção de que iria dar todo esse problema, não teria tomado. Mas todo mundo é passível de erro e eu não sou diferente de ninguém.
He said, no, I didn't go through that didn't go through my thought process. I actually, I'm human and I make mistakes, and it definitely was a mistake. If I would have known that this supplement that I was taking for something else would have had this sort of a problem, I would have never taken it in the beginning.
Okay, I want to make sure, I just have two more quick questions. Is it his testimony, is it your testimony that you absolutely had no knowledge of what was in there that we tested positive for in these results?
Então você está falando que você não tinha nenhuma noção de que os exames testou positivo estava dentro daquele suplemento?
Não tinha a menor ideia. Por isso que eu até, para a mídia brasileira, eu falei, olha, eu não sei o que falar porque eu não sei o que está acontecendo. Depois que a gente testou tudo e foi pedido para que eu desse tudo que eu tinha usado durante o tempo que eu estava treinando e antes, que foi testado, que eu vi que era isso que tinha dado positivo.
Yeah, he had no idea that was in there. He had no idea, pretty much, and he was taking it for the purpose of the sexual enhancement, and that's why even in the media, after all this came out, he never said anything because he wasn't really sure what to say, because he didn't know how this would have came up positive in his test until the results came back from the testing, the further testing, that they found out that the drostanolone was in that substance. That's when it kind of all...
Eu nunca usei nenhum tipo de anabolizante, então eu nunca precisei usar de nenhuma substância ilegal para lutar. Então isso é um fato novo para mim também.
He said, I've never used any sort of anabolics or any sort of thing like that to fight. I've fought my whole career and I've never used that. So this is actually a new topic for me also.
And how long have you actually used that?
No, I can't.
How long have you used this?
Quanto tempo você tem usando isso?
Acho que eu usei, uns 3 meses. Antes da luta eu estava usando.
He said he's been using it for approximately 3 months prior to the fight. He was using it.
Is that the only time he's ever used it in his life?
Esse é o único momento que você... let me ask the question.
Has he
That
ever used
particular
it prior
product
to
or
that
any
3
sort of sexual enhancement
No,
product?
this particular product.
Esse é o único tempo que você usou esse remédio específico?
Yes.
Yes.
He has used it before?
No, that there was just those 3 months
Those
prior,
3 months.
that particular...
And is he aware, are you aware of the product name that your friend told you this was, or was it just good
Você
stuff?
sabe o nome do produto ou só foi que o teu amigo falou que é uma coisa boa?
Meu amigo falou que era uma espécie de estimulante sexual que ele usava e que era bom. E aí eu falei, tá, ok.
Yeah, his friend basically told him that it was a sexual stimulant, that it worked well, and he took it.
Okay. And what's your friend's name?
Que é teu amigo?
Marcos
Marcos what?
Marcos.
Fernandes,
And where does he live?
Onde ele mora?
Thailand.
Thailand. Okay. Okay,
Yeah.
I don't have any other
Was
questions.
this individual present at your fight?
Ele estava presente na tua luta?
Não.
I don't have any other questions, Mr. Chairman.
How do you spell Marcos' last name?
Marco Fernandes.
Como
Sorry.
se escreve?
Fernandes, acho que. Não sei. Em inglês, I don't know.
Probably Fernadez.
Can you spell it to you in Portuguese?
Você
and
pode,
translate?
você pode falar as letras em português e eu traduzo.
Ok, Marco Fernandes. É F.
F.
Fernandes.
F.
R. F-E-R. N.
F-E-R-N.
N-D-S.
A-D-E-S. Not a Z. I'm sorry.
As a fighter for the UFC, did you attend their fighter seminars where they discussed the use of substances?
Como atleta do Ultimate, você já foi as reuniões que eles tinham quando eles falam de usando os produtos?
Fui uma vez.
Yes, I've been there. I've been to one of those once.
Okay, so he is aware of the caution that they have put on their fighters to the use of substances that are not, I guess, labeled or...
Então eles já falaram com você de usar suplemento que não está marcado ou vem de um lugar com credibilidade.
Primeira vez que eu fui, acho que foi a primeira vez que teve a reunião com o pessoal da polícia, eu acho. Mas eu não me lembro deles terem falado alguma coisa de suplemento ou coisa parecida.
He said, yeah, I do. And I went to the first summit, actually, that they had. And I remember that there was someone that came up. He thought it was something in the police that mentioned, but he doesn't remember particularly them mentioning that.
Okay. Has he followed the careers of his fellow athletes within the UFC? Trouble with substances?
Você já seguiu a carreira de outros atletas que lutam no Ultimate que já teve problema com os outros tipos de produtos?
Não entendi a pergunta.
Ele falou, você já seguiu a carreira, assim, viu o que aconteceu com os outros atletas que lutam no Ultimate que já teve problema com outros tipos de suplementos? Você segue isso?
Não. Até porque, assim, meu foco sempre foi cuidar da minha carreira. Então, eu acho que cada um tem a sua carreira, cada um tem as suas faltas e eu tive a minha e por isso que eu tô aqui hoje.
He said that he never really focused too much on other people's careers. He's always been really focused on his, and you know, that's why he's probably sitting here today, is because he didn't.
Thank you.
I'd like to pose my questions to the interpreter then that has been provided by the AG. Please ask him how long he's known Mr. Fernandez, Mark Fernandez,
Marco Fernandes?
who supplied him the substance
Oh, yes.
blue vial.
Okay, so he said he was friend of him in Thailand.
I want to know, please ask him the question, and then I'd like you just simply to go back and
Okay.
forth with the translation, please.
Ok, so você pode soletrar Marcos Fernandes, aí eu vou falando em inglês.
Yeah. Marcos é M-A.
M-A-R-C-O-S-F-E-R
F
F
E
E
R
R
N
N
E
D
S.
E S.
All right, how long has he known him?
Quanto tempo você conhece ele?
Eu não conheço muito tempo. Um ano e pouco.
He doesn't know for a long time, just for 1 year.
And what's the nature of the relationship between the two of them?
Qual a natureza qual a origem da amizade de vocês, como vocês conheceram?
Ele vive na Tailândia e ele veio para o Brasil junto com o meu treinador de Muay Thai, o Cop, que às vezes a gente treina com ele. E aí ele ficou uma semana no Brasil e não deu só para mim, mas para os outros amigos da equipe também.
So ele vive na Tailândia, amigo do seu treinador, e veio para o Brasil. Você conheceu ele no Brasil?
Yes.
Okay. So Marcos Fernandes lives in Thailand and he knows his coach, and he came to Brazil with his coach, and he could know Marcos Fernandes one time training in Brazil. It's correct? Correto. Treinando no Brasil, correto?
Yeah.
When did Marcos make the suggestion that he might benefit from this substance that was in the blue vial?
Quando que o Marcos Fernandes sugeriu que você pudesse tomar essa substância na garrafinha azul?
Não, na verdade, estávamos todos num grupo na academia conversando sobre assuntos de homem, claro. E aí chegou nesse assunto e aí, por algum motivo, acabou que... não, eu tenho... É bom, a gente usa lá e tal... E eu falei, pô, vou experimentar, vamos ver se é bom mesmo.
Okay. Mas você não lembra a data, porque ela perguntou quando?
Não lembro.
So he said that he doesn't remember the date when he suggested this medicament, but they were in a meeting with a couple of friends in the gym. They were talking about men stuff, and he suggests, I take this for it's better sexual enhancing. So, and he took.
And did he trust Marcos to the point where he was not going to question what it was that he was ingesting?
Você confiou no que o Marcos sugeriu, no que ele estava te indicando para tomar?
Yes.
Yes, he trusted.
When did he first ingest the substance?
Quando foi a primeira vez que você ingeriu essa substância?
Não me lembro. Eu me lembro, faz muito tempo, assim, foi pouco antes de eu começar meu camping para minha última luta.
He doesn't remember, was long.
Based upon his previous testimony, he had indicated that he had been taking it for about 3 months prior to his fight. Did he take it during November of 2014?
No seu primeiro depoimento, você disse que você estava tomando uns 3 meses antes da luta. Você esteve tomando durante novembro de 2014?
Eu me lembro que eu tomei, assim, um pouco antes de eu começar meu campo de treino. Eu acho que, não sei ao certo se dá 3 meses ou não.
He said that he doesn't remember exactly the date, but when he started his training, his camp training, his concentration for the fights.
Yeah, he said he started taking it before he started his training camp. He doesn't remember the exact
I don't remember exactly the day, but I use pouco antes de começar meu campo de treino.
So a little bit before the training start.
And when did the training start?
Você lembra quando você começou a treinar para a luta?
Não me lembro.
He doesn't remember.
I don't remember.
He doesn't remember.
So you have no recollection then as to when your training starts, or specifically when you ingested it, other than your previous testimony that you were taking it at least the 3 months before your fight. Is that accurate?
Então, você testifica que você não lembra a data que você começou a ingerir essa substância, mas no seu primeiro depoimento você disse que seriam uns 3 meses antes da luta.
Eu não me lembro. Eu tô dando mais ou menos 3 meses que eu acredito que tenha sido, mas eu não tenho a data exata. Não tem como eu afirmar a data exata.
He said he just can't remember the exact date, and he just said 3 months because he thinks was before the fight.
Now, when was the last time that he took it?
Quando foi a última vez que você tomou essa substância?
A última vez que eu tomei foi quando eu cheguei em Los Angeles para terminar meu camp training em Los Angeles.
The last time he took the substance when he arrived in Los Angeles to finish his training.
And when did he arrive in Los Angeles then to finish his training?
Quando você chegou em Los Angeles para terminar seu camp training?
Eu não me lembro a data de quando eu cheguei. não tenho certeza da data.
He's not sure the date.
A luta
When he
foi
arrived.
em... Quando foi a luta, Ed?
Dia 31 de janeiro.
Quando que eu cheguei?
Dia 8 de janeiro.
Aí, eu acho que foi dia 8 de janeiro que eu cheguei aqui. Foi dia... Eu não tenho certeza, não tem como eu afirmar porque eu não tenho certeza.
He thinks that was January 8th when he arrived here before the fight.
Okay.
And so he acknowledges taking the drug that was in the blue vial during the month of January. Is that accurate?
Então você tem conhecimento, você tem ciência que você tomou essa substância dentro da garrafa azul durante janeiro.
Sim.
Yes.
Did he
has
reveal
knowledge.
his ingestion of the drug to anyone?
So can you repeat, please?
Did he reveal the ingestion of this particular drug from the blue vial to anyone?
Você revisou, você usou novamente essa...
Não, você falou com outras pessoas aqui,
sobre essa ingestão.
que você
Sir.
estava tomando isso.
Please,
No.
only one at a time.
Você comentou com alguém sobre essa ingestão dessa substância da garrafa azul?
Não, do meu camp train não, só com os amigos no Brasil, quando eu estava no Brasil, no momento que a gente conversou sobre a situação. Mas depois não.
Ninguém. No, he never revealed to anybody.
Let me turn your attention to a different topic. There were supplements that were revealed to Mr. Scott, my apologies, to Mr. Scott. Was he ingesting those supplements that were revealed to Mr. Scott?
Você estava tomando essa substância e você revelou para o Sr. Scott quando você estava tomando, você revelou a ele?
Quando deu o problema do doping, eu peguei todos os suplementos que eu estava tomando e entreguei para ele.
Quando deu o problema, quando você...
Quando falaram que eu tinha caído no doping.
Okay, so he said that he revealed to Mr. Scott when he was failed in the doping. When he...
Now, I want to know, there were 7 substances that were revealed to Mr. Scott. Was he taking those 7 substances?
Você estava tomando aquelas substâncias que você revelou para o Sr. Scott, você estava tomando?
A última vez que eu tomei foi quando eu cheguei em Los Angeles para terminar meu camp training.
So he said that he was using, he has knowledge, he had took the Mr. Scott's substance, and the last time when he arrived in Los Angeles.
All right.
To finish
I've got 2 additional topics then I want to ask you questions upon. First is the pre-fight medical questionnaire. On the pre-fight medical questionnaire, you were asked if you were taking any supplements. The answer to that question was no. Why did he answer no to that question?
The pre-fight questionnaire. So, ela perguntou no pre-fight questionnaire que você completou, você falou que não estava tomando nenhuma substância. Foi não. Por que você falou que não estava tomando nenhuma substância?
Porque eu não ia falar que estava tomando Viagra, né? Cialis, né?
Okay, so he didn't want to say that he was using the enhancing performance sexual in the questionnaire. He didn't want to.
Até porque não era uma coisa assim que, assim, eu tinha tomado muito perto da luta. Foi quando eu cheguei em Los Angeles. Então eu fiquei mais, acho que
Okay,
um mês e pouco.
He's saying that he took the substance close to the fight, and he didn't want to tell that he was using Viagra.
Turning your attention then to another topic, the benzos that he's admitted to ingesting. Explain the circumstances as to why he ingested those.
Agora, sobre os benzos, você estava tomando essas substâncias. Por que você ingeriu essas substâncias dos benzos?
Na noite da pesagem, depois da pesagem, eu fui pro quarto, senti um pouco de dor nas costas, não estava conseguindo dormir e tomei.
Na noite do dia da pesagem, okay. So, in the day of the waiting, he was not feeling well after, depois da pesagem. Você não estava sentindo
É.
bem. Okay. After the waiting, he was not feeling well, and then he went to his room and he took the benzos to make him better.
Where do you get the benzos?
Onde você tomou os benzos? Da onde você...
Pegou.
Aonde você pegou?
Eu tive, quando eu estava no Brasil, eu tive uma crise no ciático e acabei ficando uma noite no hospital, e foi uma dos medicamentos que o médico me prescreveu.
So when
Se eu
he...
sentisse dor, era para mim tomar.
So when he was in Brazil, he was having a crisis in his sciatic, and he was in pain. And then a doctor friend, he prescribed him this substance to him if he has a crisis again in his sciatic.
And on how many occasions then had he taken the benzos?
Quantas vezes você tomou benzos?
No Brasil, eu acho que eu tomei uma vez no hospital, que eu fiquei uma noite no hospital, e na noite da pesagem eu tomei antes de dormir.
So in Brazil, he just had one time when he was at the hospital, and the night of the waiting here.
And when was the time at the hospital? What was the approximate date of that?
Você lembra mais ou menos a data aproximada quando você estava no hospital no Brasil?
Não lembro.
He doesn't remember.
Did he reveal to anyone the night that he took the benzos that he intended to do so?
Você lembra se você revelou para alguém na noite que você teve o benzo, que você estava com a intenção de tomar, você revelou para alguém?
Não.
Não lembra?
Não,
Ou
não falei para
revelou?
ninguém.
Okay.
Não.
No, he didn't reveal to anybody.
And the next day, then, when he appeared for the fight, did he reveal to any of the Nevada Athletic Commission staff that he had ingested that drug?
E no outro dia que você apareceu para a Comissão Atlética de Nevada, você revelou para alguém que você tinha ingerido essa substância?
No outro dia? Como assim, no outro dia?
Você revelou para alguém antes, no outro dia depois da pesagem?
Não, porque, assim, a pesagem foi na sexta. Eu lutei no sábado. Então, não tinha como eu falar com a comissão que eu tinha tomado. Não tinha por que eu falar.
Okay.
Se eu tivesse tomado antes da pesagem, eu iria comunicar à comissão, como eu sempre fiz. Todos os remédios que eu sempre tomei antes, durante o tempo que eu estava em Vegas para a luta,
Sim.
eu sempre comuniquei, sempre levei a bula dos remédios. Só que eu tomei depois. E aí não falei por quê. Até porque era minha volta na minha luta. Eu passei a noite inteira com dor e excitado para lutar e um pouco nervoso, porque era minha volta depois que eu quebrei minha perna, e por algum motivo não falei para ninguém.
Okay, so he said he didn't reveal to anybody after he took the substance. He was in his room in painful. After the waiting, he was excited to his appearance. Was his return after he broke his leg. So he didn't talk to anybody that he took this substance, even to the Athletic Commission.
And one last question then for him. Ask him if he acknowledges his responsibility to know what it is that he ingests and whether or not that it is appropriate for him to do so.
Você tem... sorry, can you repeat your question?
Does he acknowledge that it's his responsibility to know what it is that he is ingesting?
Você tem conhecimento em suas responsabilidades e conhecimento de quais são as substâncias que você estava tomando? Você tem conhecimento de uso?
O benzo que eu estava tomando, eu tenho conhecimento, que era para uma dor que eu estava sentindo e não estava conseguindo dormir. Quanto ao Cialis, eu não sabia que poderia estar contaminado, até porque não era uma coisa que passava na minha cabeça. Eu sei que pelo atleta que eu sou e etc., eu devia ter ido no médico, mas como eu já havia dito, eu sou um ser humano e sou passivo de falhas.
Okay. So he just has a knowledge that he took the benzo. He has this knowledge, but the other substance he believes was contaminated, and he didn't know that, and he believes that every human being has your mistakes, and he knew that he could find a doctor, but he just agreed that he did a mistake.
So he went to the doctor for a medical issue of a sciatic nerve, but he did not go to the doctor for the issue related to his sexual performance.
I guess just, I don't know that he's saying there was a medical issue
But he's saying he went to the hospital.
for his back. But
Correct.
Talking about the other issue you raised.
Okay,
And
but my question is, he could go to, I guess I'm trying to make a statement then, he could go to the hospital for issues with his back, but he could not go to the doctor, he couldn't find the time to go to the doctor to get a prescription for the issue his personal issue.
Understood, but I guess what I'm trying to clarify for the record is I don't think he said that it was like a medical issue that needed medical attention. It was an enhancement.
And I think that's just the issue, is that he refuses to answer the question, and so it's speculation on your part, as well as on our part, as to why it is that he was ingesting it.
Okay. I'm just trying to, Mr. Soares, as his friend and his agent, his manager, did you know that he was consuming supplements prior to the fight?
No, I don't really get too involved with that. I don't know what he was taking, but to address the comment you said before, when he went to the hospital for his pain in his back, that was all over the internet. He did go to the hospital for that. And what at that point is when the doctor prescribed him the benzos, and it was and a part of that was a sciatic nerve and anxiety of him coming back. So I just kind of wanted to clear it up because some things got a little crossed up there, and I just wanted to make sure that it got translated 100% what it was, and what it was is it was anxiety. It wasn't excitement. When they were saying, he was saying there was anxiety, his pain, and everything the night of the fight, going into fight. You know, that's why he took those benzos, and it was prescribed from the doctor that prescribed it when he went to the hospital in Brazil. I recall that might have been about mid-December, and it was all over the internet. You could look it up. He stayed the night in the hospital because of some back pain. So that is on the internet because it was.
And he only took the benzo the time he went to the hospital and the night before?
Yes.
So there's only 2 times he consumed the benzo.
Então só tinha 2 vezes que você consumiu o remédio.
Foi no hospital e eu fiquei no hospital um dia, uma noite no hospital e tomei no hospital e a médica falou, se você sentir dor ou não conseguir dormir por conta da dor, você toma de novo. E depois eu viajei para Los Angeles e quando eu fui para a luta, no dia da pesagem, à noite, eu tomei de novo porque eu sentia um pouco de dor nas costas e não estava conseguindo dormir.
He said that the doctor said that after he left the hospital, he took that medication at the hospital. Once he left the hospital, the doctor said if you have any problem with pain, if you're not able to sleep, take this again. He relatively didn't have any pain to not make him sleep, except the night prior to the fight is when.
Eu posso conseguir o prontuário médico se precisar. Provar que eu tive no médico.
Yeah, he said he can provide the prescription.
4 de novembro, eu acho que eu tive no médico.
He can provide that. Okay.
That's fine. Any other further questions by commissioners? Mr. Eccles, or do you want to wrap this up, Mr. Alonso, or do you want to make any further comment? I'll come back to you after Mr. Eccles, if that's... Mr. Eccles?
I just have a question for Mr. Scott.
Sure.
Mr. Scott, has a court ever found that you're not competent to testify as an expert witness?
A court has not, but a New York City Police Commissioner, when asked for me to be submitted as an expert in anti-doping rejected it, I believe, on the basis that I could not provide him medical advice as to clenbuterol.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Alonso?
I guess, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, again, as we've talked about before, and I think in terms of the First Amendment complaint, if you find that there are violations, then I think that it would be fair to treat Mr. Silva as a first-time offender. And I think it's important to point out the way the purse worked here. There was a show purse and a win bonus. And I think if you compare boxers to MMA fighters, they are on a little bit different standard because boxers don't use the win bonus. And so I would ask you to take that into consideration. If you're going to remove the win bonus, then I would ask that the fine be applied to the entire amount rather than removing it and then applying the amount, because I think you could have two people with the same exact circumstances. One is a boxer and one's an MMA fighter. You'd have very different financial penalties.
What was the win bonus?
$200,000.
And what was the show purse?
$600,000.
Thank you.
Can I just get a clarification real quick from you? So I understand from Mr. Silva's testimony that he stopped taking the drug January 8th, but the defense is saying that the product, the blue vial, was what had the steroid in it, and that's the reason why. So if he stopped taking it January 9th, why is there a positive test on January 31st?
I don't know the answer to that, Mr. Chairman. Our position...
But your position was that the substance is what he's admitted to taking had the steroid in it.
Our position is that he has taken the position from day one that he did not knowingly or intentionally administer an anabolic steroid.
Okay.
So we sought to try to find sources for them. And as Mr. Scott testified, he did find the drostanolone in the blue vial.
Okay, but he stopped, by his testimony, he stopped consuming it January 8th.
That's what he
So
said.
my question to doctors, is this appropriate for me to go to Dr. Eichner to find out how long of a life a steroid would have an individual, and would there be a positive test if this was the source of the steroid, would it show up on a January 31st test if he stopped taking it January 8th?
Yeah, it's your time to ask him a question.
Dr. Eichner? Dr. Eichner, you're going to have to press star 6 again because I've had to mute the phone a couple of times. Dr. Eichner?
Quando eu cheguei em Los Angeles.
Sorry, I just...
There's when I stop.
Okay. Where's the music guy when you need him? Okay. Dr. Eichner?
Dr. Leichner?
All right, please dial back in. Thank you, sir. Call back in. I'm sure that's not.
You're damned if you do.
Hey, this is Daniel Eichner. I apologize. I heard everything, and then as soon as I went to answer, it cut out on me, so I apologize for that.
Okay, so let me pose in a hypothetical. Supposing I was consuming a substance on January 8th, and that did contain the steroid, and I stopped using that steroid on January 8th, would that steroid or that substance cause me to test positive on January 31st?
Okay, if we're specifically talking about drostanolone,
Yes, please.
the metabolites we detected pre and post fight had to have been administered about a week before we tested them. That's how long that window of protection is. So if they ceased using that product on the 8th of January, that's not consistent with what we saw on the 31st of January.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Can you explain that?
Can you
Would
interpret?
Mr. Silva care to explain that?
You want me to translate what you just
I mean, the testimony from the doctor is that that test on the 31st would have to be no longer than a week old, so that doesn't jive with the 20
Ele falou,
something days prior.
falou que os resultados que saíram no dia 31 de janeiro não tem como você tomando esse produto no dia 8 de janeiro e ainda aparecer no dia 31 de janeiro nos teus exames, porque normalmente esse produto sai do teu sistema durante uma semana. Então, você vai ter que, para isso ser isso, você tem que tomar durante a semana, durante 7 dias do exame. Você tem uma resposta para isso?
Tenho, eu tomei. Eu me lembro que eu tomei quando eu cheguei em Los Angeles. Eu acredito. Eu tomei quando eu cheguei em Los Angeles. E acho que antes da gente viajar eu tomei também. Antes de ir pra. Acho que 4, 5 dias antes da gente ir pra Vegas eu tomei.
He says that he recalls taking it when he got to Los Angeles, and maybe he did take it.
Na noite que a gente foi pra Vegas. Na noite que eu fui pra Vegas, acho que eu tomei.
The night that he went to Vegas, when he got here for the week of the
Foi na
fight.
semana, eu acho que na
The
semana.
week of the fight, você tomou ou capaz que tomou?
Tomei.
He said he took it.
Is that correct? In
So
this
he
translation?
said, sorry, so he said that he took in the week he was coming to Las Vegas. And he took in the January 8th.
Miss?
Oh, sorry.
Good.
Yes. So he said,
Start over again, thank you.
okay, so he said he took the substance when he was coming to Las Vegas, when he traveled here, and January 8th again.
What
Na
date- what
noite
dates are we
que eu
talking
fui
now?
pra Vegas eu tomei.
In the night, você lembra o dia que você foi para Vegas, a noite que você
Ah,
What dates are-
na semana da lua.
foi na semana.
A data, the date that we left to go to Vegas, if I recall correctly, it was that Tuesday, the week prior to the fight. So
Okay.
I don't know the exact, maybe the 27th or
Okay, so
something.
now we know
So-
dates.
so
We
he's
didn't know
saying-
dates previously, but all of a sudden we know dates now.
The date, he's saying the date that we came to Vegas.
To Vegas.
But he testified January 8th
Right.
was the last time he ingested the substance in the blue vial.
And now he's.
Now he's
Now saying
testifying,
that he did after.
Right.
and we have a remembrance of dates at this point in time.
Yeah.
No, I'm remembering the date because I remember the date.
Well, we asked you the dates as
I
well.
didn't ask you the dates.
Okay, that's fine.
I'm just saying the dates that we came, because this just came up now about the date that he traveled to Vegas because she was saying that, and I was
Okay.
saying.
The point is, I think we can
Supplement.
get to a point, I think we can start to see, from my perspective, some major inconsistencies in the testimony. And I think I've had enough testimony, unless there's additional testimony, but I do want to address one issue. I just handed Mr. Alonso the pre-fight questionnaire. There are 2 signatures on that application. There is Mr. Silva's, and there is a second individual, which I think is Mr. Suarez. Is that correct? So your testimony is that that is your signature on the pre-fight questionnaire?
Yes,
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And when I asked him, like I told you, I don't know what supplements you take, so I said, what supplements do you take? And I fill it out and sign it.
And he had an understanding at the time that you were asking those questions that he had a duty to be honest in response to the inquiries, correct?
E você sabe que nos momentos que eu fiz essas perguntas para você, dessas perguntas no dia da pesagem, que você tinha para ser honesto com isso.
Claro, eu não falei que tomei Cialis porque, porra, eu ia falar que a comissão que eu tomei Cialis. Tô falando agora porque o negócio estava contaminado. Se não tivesse contaminado, eles não iam saber também.
He said, yeah, he didn't disclose that he was taking the Cialis because he didn't think it was going to come up.
So now we have a brand name of what the substance is.
Or no, I'm just saying whatever well, I don't know what the brand name is, but he just I'm just translating what he's saying. You know what I mean?
He specifically referred to Cialis in his testimony.
Right now, he just said he didn't mention the Cialis because it wasn't, that's, I'm just translating. I mean.
Right, my question is different, though.
Okay.
When you asked him the questions that were set forth on the pre-fight medical questionnaire, he gave you answers. Did he understand that he had an obligation to be truthful in giving those answers to you?
Quando eu estava fazendo essas perguntas que estavam no questionário, você sabe que você tinha uma obrigação para ser honesto com todas as suas respostas?
Claro, se eu tivesse tomado todos os remédios que nas outras vezes eu tomei quando eu estava em fase de luta, como houve em outras vezes, como aconteceu em outras vezes, eu teria falado, entendeu? A minha falha foi não falar que tomei o Cialis, porque, porra, como é que eu vou falar pra você que eu tomei Cialis, meu irmão? Pra quê? Entendeu?
He said prior to, in other fights, whatever medication he took prior to the fights, in his other fights, he's always disclosed and brought the medication to show. He said, I would feel very uncomfortable looking to you and saying that I'm taking Cialis, prior to the fight, and that's why I never expressed that in the questionnaire.
Mr. Scott, did you test Cialis or did you test the substance in a blue vial?
I tested the substance in a translucent blue vial.
Okay. So you never tested Cialis?
I did not attempt to identify the bulk of the substance in the blue vial. Was not provided with anything that had the name Cialis on it. I was told it was Cialis, but it was clearly not the brand name.
Thank you.
Ms. Murch, the response that to the last question that was translated by Mr. Soros, was that an accurate translation?
Yes, was.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Mr. Eccles, do you have any further comment, or are you closed? Are you done with your case?
Would Mr. Alonso agree with me that the testimony of Dr. Eichner is that of an expert toxicologist?
I have no reason to object to that, no.
Okay. I don't have a closing. There's been plenty of testimony. I leave it to the commission to evaluate the credibility of the witnesses. I would add one request, though, when you're discussing it in your deliberations, if you could make reference to how you weigh the value of the testimony and what they brought to the table of Dr. Scott versus that of Dr. Eichner. That would be helpful for the issuance of an order.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Alonso, your closing, sir.
Just, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, I think I've covered it all in terms of, I don't want to interrupt you during your deliberations, but my understanding is the range would be 9 to 12 months. And we talked about the penalty, the financial penalty, and I would hope that he would take his history and all of those factors into consideration, and his age, and err on the side of the lower end of that spectrum. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any further comment from your team? Are you're it?
No.
Okay. We're now going to enter. Do you have a question?
I do have one more question. Does Mr. Silva recall the last time that he was enhanced tested in his career, or prior to his injury, was he always tested on fight night, pre-post? Had he ever been subjected to enhanced in competition or out of competition testing prior to his injury?
Antes que você se machucar, você se lembra a qualquer momento você sendo testado fora de, you're saying out of not just the fight night, like out of competition is what you're saying?
Was this the first time he'd ever been tested in any other way other than fight night?
Essa foi a primeira vez que você já foi testado fora sendo a noite da luta?
Eu acho que sim. Acho que foi.
Yes, he believes.
And what fight was that?
No, this is the only fight.
This is the only fight. So that his entire career, he's been tested on the night of the fight, pre-post, but never in advance, because with his injury, he was definitely prior to the enhanced testing era.
Yeah. Então ele está falando que antes dessa luta, essa foi a primeira vez que você foi testado fora de sendo testado da noite da luta.
Antes de quebrar minha perna, nunca fui testado antes da luta. Essa foi a primeira vez.
He said prior to him breaking his leg, this is the first time he's ever been tested outside of the pre and post of his fight night.
Okay, thank you. Any follow-up after that?
No.
Okay, we're going to enter deliberations. Is there any objection from either of you before you want to make any additional comments? Hearing none, we'll now enter deliberations. At this point in time, the commission will determine where it wants to go as far as a motion and what penalty it wants to impose. I'm going to start this one. I think, given the testimony, and I may be out on an island on here, but given the testimony we heard today, it's quite evident there's some major inconsistencies in what I've heard and the testimony I've heard. And for that reason, I would actually proceed with going on the higher end for a penalty. The fine amount doesn't really make a difference to me, but what does make a difference to me is the amount of time that the suspension occurs. And for that, I would recommend 7 days, along with our other common, 12 months, sorry, from the time of the fight. And I say that given the testimony we hear today. I think there's been very similar instances where we've had these types of situations, and when the fighter does come forward and is consistent in the testimony and takes some responsibility and shows some remorse, but I don't think that exists today. And that's my personal opinion.
I'm going to start with the easy stuff. We had a pre-fight medical questionnaire. That pre-fight medical questionnaire was quite specific. It says, have you taken any medication, drug, cream, inhalant, or injection, whether prescription, over-the-counter, from anyone or any place, in the last month? If yes, explain. The answer to that was given by Mr. Silva was none. And we have testimony from Mr. Silva's side, first and foremost, that he was taking at least 7 supplements that should have been disclosed to us during that period of time. So we have an intentional falsification then of the pre-fight medical questionnaire that's been admitted then by Mr. Silva. His reason for falsifying that is that he did not want to reveal that he was taking some type of a drug or a supplement for performance enhancement. And therefore, it's an admission, from my perspective, of an intentional falsification. Second, we have an admission then of a positive test from January 9th of 2015. The explanation for that is because he was taking a contaminated substance. We have an admission that in fact that he was taking the benzos the night before, and that there was no revelation of that information for him. There has been a contest to the findings of Smyrtle for the post-fight and the pre-fight, both A and B testing, and the contest to that has been, well, Quest didn't find the same thing. To respond to that, though, the claim has been made that Quest wouldn't have found the finding in January, on January 9th of 2015. If that's the case, then none of the Quest findings would have revealed the ingestion of the contaminated substance that's been admitted then by Mr. Silva to have resulted in a positive test January 9th, as well as pre- and post-fight test on January 31st, which is entirely explainable. Quest does a very rudimentary type of a testing. It is less refined than that of Smyrtle. In other words, if you liken this to fishing with a net, the net that Quest fish with has got larger weave. The net that Smyrtle fishes with has got a tighter weave, and it catches more folks. The Smyrtle findings then, I think, have been demonstrated for January 9th as well as for January 31st, both pre- and post-fight testing. I agree with Commissioner and our chairman in that there have been additional inconsistencies, even given those inconsistencies, and if you attribute those to the possibly the issues associated with some type of a translation, I think the admissions that have been made and the explanations that have been offered by Mr. Silva demonstrate that there should be a liability finding against him both on the January 9th substances, the January 31st substances, as well as the falsification of the information on the pre-fight medical questionnaire. And so I would agree that we should be at the higher range of the scale when it comes to the penalties to be imposed.
I would echo a tremendous amount of inconsistencies. I don't know any other way to say it, but I don't feel like we're getting the whole story. I'm not going to say it's a lie. I'm not going to say you're not telling the truth under oath, but I'm not getting the whole picture here. In the past, I've been pretty brutal about people I don't think are giving us the whole story. And I'm not taking anything away from Mr. Silva's career. I think he's done excellent things. He's by far one of the top fighters in the world. But this is the first time he's really been subject to enhanced testing. So it's hard to put a lot of credibility into his prior test results. Not his career, but his prior test results. That was why I asked the question. And based on some of the time frames that started to come out and based on the testimony from Dr. Eichner, I can see how a test can go from positive to negative back to positive based on how this product is being used. And I am a little bit concerned that there is some, we have a great DJ, by the way, today, that there is some, I feel that there's some intention here to use a product to come back from a devastating injury. I feel that. I'm not saying that's it, but I've got that feeling in my stomach that we're not getting the whole story. There's definitely knowledge of what's going on here, and we're just playing games. So hence my frustration for the last 2 hours of kind of all this soft testimony. So I'm definitely in favor in the upper end of the range on a number of the items.
I certainly agree with my fellow commissioners. I am confused and a bit frustrated myself as to your responses to some very delicate questions. I look at the entire answer with respect to sexual enhancement as though it's almost a masking agent for the potential intentional use of something that would be forbidden by this commission. And there have been inconsistencies, as pointed out by the chairman and Commissioner Lumval, with respect to those questions. So I would be supportive as well, Chairman, of the higher end, and even higher end today will be far less than higher end 60 days from now.
To address Mr. Eccles' request, I don't think there's a need to do a weighing of the testimony. I think given the testimony that we have, because there was no challenge that was made to the findings by Smyrtle or Quest, there was an attempt to provide an explanation by Mr. Scott vis-a-vis why it is that those positive tests were obtained by Smyrtle. And so to the extent that Mr. Scott's testimony, we will use it in making our findings. And so I don't think that there needs to be an evaluation then in a weighing and a determination then as to which expert is maybe more credible. I'd be prepared to make a motion that we would impose a 12-month suspension upon Mr. Silva, that he be required to disgorge his win bonus, that he be required to disgorge 30% of his show purse, that he be required to present a clean test upon reapplication or his next fight here in the state of Nevada, that we change the outcome on the, change the result then on the fight that he had on January 31st, and that he be required to reimburse the Attorney General and the testing costs that were incurred then by the Nevada Athletic Commission. That would be my motion.
There's been a motion by Commissioner Lundvall. Is there a second?
Second that.
There's been a second by Commissioner Marnell. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Alonso. Thank you, Mr. Silva, for being here today. I appreciate you being here. Thank you, Mr. Eccles.